Hello, this is Malorian, this is the Orc Tactical Team, and what this is going to be here this time is actually the first time I've ever done a Orc Tactical Team on 40k, and that's because the new book came out for the Dark Angels. So, if you're looking at this and going, oh boy, you know, Malorian's going to be now talking about some real in-depth stuff about the whole book and all the tactical insights, I'm sorry, it's not going to be like that because, well, one, I'm just not that really into 40k, so even though I can probably give some good insight, I'm sure I'm going to be missing something as I'm just not that... I'm not going to say into the game, it's just I just don't know all the rules well enough in order to cover everything. The other thing is that out of the whole book, I only care about Deathwing. This is only going to be a video about what the new Deathwing is compared to the old one. So there you have it, let's get into it. So when I saw this book, I thought it was great, and I thought, wow, I can't wait to see what they do with it. And the real reason for that, well, I guess the first thing for me to say is a reason why I actually like Deathwing. Out of all the 40k armies I have, I mean, I got Marines, of course, and I got Orcs, and I probably got something other sitting around somewhere. But the Deathwing one is actually the army that I always like for two reasons. One, it's just a bunch of Terminators, and I just like the idea of it. I don't really care much about the fluff, like, oh, you know, there's a big secret and all these things, or robes. In fact, none of my guys have robes right now. But I just like the idea that they're all Terminators, because for me, knowing from when I started with 40k, you know, Terminators, they're always the badass guys, the killed guys, and this is an army that's all Terminators. So as soon as I learned that you could take Bile with the last book and make an army of just completely them, I was sold. The other thing I love about it is the fact that you can just take your army in a shoebox and have everything you need for a full tournament, right? You got all these other guys with a case and a big huge banker box, and you're like, no, I got a shoebox, this is my army right here. So that's why I love them. But one of the things why I was excited going from that first book to the second one that let you do that full army is really just the fact that the last one was so restrictive. It was really the first time GW got into the whole restricting type of idea. Before that, you had these massive war gear sections, and you had a lot of options you could play with, and this was kind of like their first time, the book before this, where they're going to say, you know what, no, we're not going to do it anymore, let's really restrict the hell out of this. Your characters had very little that they could actually pick from, and even the units, man, that was so restrictive. The fact that your unit had to be, bam, 250 points, 5 guys, done. Okay, you can take one of each of these weapons or something, or over your whole army, one of them can have a banner, but man, that made some major problems, because you take something like, I was just about to make a list before this came up for 1750, and I thought, oh, that'll be easy, I can play with the points. But the problem is that unless sometimes you're asked the question, basically, do I want to make an army with no special weapons or heavy weapons? Because once you add a couple in, well, all of a sudden the difference of trying to balance it, of having to either have a unit or not, or a 30-point upgrade or not, it just doesn't work out across the whole army. And so really, to fit in other points, you might be, you know, 100 points under or something stupid like that, right? So I really didn't like it, and I really found a lot of times I was trying to make an army that I didn't really need, maybe throwing in a librarian, something like that, just to try and make the points work out, and I didn't really like it. And then this book comes along. Let's jump into this one here, and man, the options are back, and I'm a happy gamer. So I guess the first thing to jump to is Bile. Most of his stats, I mean, he's pretty much the same thing. He has a pretty interesting warlord stat now, where if he goes and he kills the other warlord, it's worth another objective. And the thing that I see from this is, one, it's kind of fluffy because it's supposed to be like hunting the other guys down, but the other part I love about this is that it's actually worthwhile. I mean, I obviously said I'm not big enough 40k, but one thing I do know is that out of all the little warlord traits I've gotten, they're almost always completely useless. This one plays a good role in every single game you play, so a very important thing to have going for you with this. The other thing is they just made him basically better. In the last one, his sword was pretty much lame. Sure, it was unique, but I mean, a master crafted power weapon, This new one here, where you're always wounding on a 2+, that's pretty neat. And the fact with his gun, now on a 5+, he's able to pick off the guys. And so between that better weapon of his and the better gun, well, all of a sudden it gives you a much better time to go and decide, well, I think I'm just going to go with the standard build where he has his unique weapon in his gun, because then I get the benefits from both. At least for my part, I mean, I already have a model built with power claws or lightning claws, so I'm probably going to be staying with that. But it's fairly neat that you actually have that difference on him. He does have still the options to take those other combinations of weapons, but for the most part, it's not that big of a deal. And of course, I mean, why would you go with Thunderhammer Shield when he has an Iron Halo anyway and he already has a 4+ ward? You might as well either go for extra attacks with the Lightning Claws or go with the shooting and stuff with his regular weapon. And really, if I was going and if I didn't have a Bile mid right now, I would just take the stock build and go with that. Also pretty cool that he has things like the teleport Homer on him and all that stuff, just these little extra things on him. And while we're talking about that too, just the difference in how the whole Deathwing Deep Strike changed. I mean, before you could have up to half your units going Deep Strike turn 1. Well, in this one, now you have more options where you can pick either turn 1 or turn 2, and you know, depending on how your opponent might be coming in with their reserves, you might be wanting to wait to turn 2 so that you're actually countering him. But the big thing is that you also have something that combines with that, because whenever you have a unit come in from Deep Strike, they also get to re-roll their shooting. So that is a pretty nice thing to have. And really what that means, especially because it can come on turn 1, is that you always want to have stuff deep striking, because if you don't, you're just kind of wasting out on what you could have on rerolls. I mean, obviously you can't have the entire army deep strike, because then you'll lose because you have nothing on the table. But otherwise, I mean, it's just a really nice thing to have where, okay, I'll just have X number of my units deep striking, and I guess they all get to reroll a hit. Yay! You know, good things going there. So really like the way that they kind of changed that. And of course, it's another thing too where it doesn't force you to, but it kind of leads you on saying, okay, this is the way we want the army to be. We want Belial to have his fancy sword and all that stuff, so we make it a little bit of benefit. We're not forcing you to take it, but there's that little benefit where now you probably really want to do it to get the most out of it. And you know what? We really want Deathwing to be deep striking in. We're not going to force you to do it, but we're going to give you these benefits and these little bonuses just to trying to entice you to do it. So really nice there. One of the things I saw after that next that actually had me a little bit discouraged is the fact that before you would have Terminators that were troops and you could still take them as elites. So basically you could be taking 9 choices, and now you can only take them as troops. And my first gut reaction to that was, oh man, that's too bad, because there's been often times where I was running units of 9 Terminators. Well, the thing here though that I quickly realized after is that it doesn't really matter, because not only do you have it where you can actually take larger units now, you can actually take the units up to 10. And it's even a thing too where before I said it was restrictive with only 5, it's not like you have to take 5 or 10, you can actually be anywhere in the middle. So you have all those, you know, it's so much easier to balance out your list for any point total now. But the big thing is that if you go with 10, now you can combat squad them. So really with one FOC, you can be going with 12 units of these guys in troops. And the big thing too, as I had some trouble before, I might have 9 units of Terminators, but then I'd have to also remember, okay, which ones are scoring, which ones are elite, so they're not scoring. Now it's just, no, you know what? It's all simple. If they're in the list, they're scoring. It's pretty easy. So I really like the way that was changed, and that you actually get to do that. And you know, of course, it also comes up where sometimes it's already built into the new system where you might be using more than one FOC. That actually happens more in this edition than in the previous one. Of course, it doesn't really happen all that often, but again, that's another way where that's not really restriction. When it comes to the actual options on these Terminators, you know, it's pretty much the same as before. There's been some little points adjustments. One of the things I did notice is that before, any model could be changing their weapons for these different combinations, but in this one here, it's not like that. Now it can be that oh, okay, sorry, no, I'm thinking about the heavy weapons here, but The main thing here with that changeover is that it's not all free anymore. You can't just change any guy to whatever you want and just say, okay, it's the same points no matter what combination I take. Because even though going to Lightning Claws is, you know, a free thing going across, and okay, maybe it's alright because it's a little bit better. The one that was always the best option to have, the Thunder Hammer and the Shield, now it's 5 more points per model, which I completely agree with, and it's probably the way it should be. You know, because it is a little bit better. And I really think that when you're trying to build these lists, that you're going to be having it so you're probably going to have at least one of these models standing in the front, so that whenever you take that last cannon shot or something from far away, it'll go onto them. You know, it's not as good as before, where if they took regular shooting, you'd put it on somebody else, and then if it was a last cannon, it'd go onto the shield. Now it has to be everything on the front, but at least it's something that you're always going to be putting there as a safeguard, because hey, it's only 5 points. Same thing here, the Chain Fist. You know, at least in a few units, just unless you see a Land Raider or something, it's the same as the last book. You're probably going to be throwing a couple on the list, just a kind of a backup. And man, it's only 5 points. You might as well use it. Otherwise, if you see a Land Raider, you're only glancing on 6s, so you might as well put something in there with some punch. The big change here, though, is that now you can actually take a plasma cannon. So that's a different weapon that makes them unique and you've never seen before on these guys. But the thing is that, for, at least from my view, is that even though the game has shifted to be seeing more infantry, I really don't see how this is really going to come up. In all the games, I mean, I used to really love plasma cannons, and I used to take dev squads full of plasma cannons because I just kind of loved the idea of it. However, of course, whenever you face someone and you show up with a bunch of plasma cannons, they just space out. And so really the only time that this usually ever helps you is if somebody deep strikes and they're all bunched together. But of course, in this edition, you can always run instead of shooting. So as soon as they deep strike, they just spread out anyway. So really, this plasma cannon shooting is not going to be doing that much, really. So I really don't see it. You might throw one in there just so you can say, haha, look, I have a plasma cannon on a Terminator and you don't. But for the most part, when you look at the options, I mean, you got the heavy flamer, which is pretty, you know, maybe if you had, no, you're never going to take that heavy flamer unless you're trying to do something, you know, if you're used to seeing lots of orcs or something, I don't know. But even then, you're probably going to be going either with the assault cannon or going with the cyclone missile launcher. Now, while we're talking about their shooting as well, something that's really neat that they have is they actually have the split fire rule as well. So what this allows them to do is actually shoot at different things. So you never have to waste it anymore, where if you have a unit set up with Power Fist and Storm Bolters, it's not like, well man, if I shoot this at this tank for the Cyclone Missile Launcher, then all these bolters are wasted. Or if I go and I'm shooting into these gaunts coming at me, sure, the bolters are going to rip them all up, but the problem is that these Cyclone Missile Launchers, I mean, same thing, right? It could be doing blast, but if they're not all bunched up and if they're all spread out, it's not really doing very much for you. Well, now you can have the Combi Bolters, or sorry, the Storm Bolter shooting the infantry, and you can have your heavy weapon shooting the tank. So I really like how they added that too. And I mean, the base cost for a unit went up by 5 points, but really between that split fire option, the whole thing where now the deep striking changed and the re-rolling to hit, I really like all these changes. And I think, I mean, for 5 points, sure, that's fantastic. Hell, I mean, just for the option to be able to take anywhere between 5 and 10, I'll pay an extra 5 points for that, no problem. So I love that. A couple of new things that they have here is they have the new Deathwing Knights. Now, when I first saw the models, I thought, wow, this is cool. You know, not only do I have an army of Terminators, I'll now have this new kind of knightly toweled army or unit. They'll be like my super elites. I'd heard about how when you put them together and they're base to base, then they get +1 toughness. Oh, that's so cool. They're just going to move as a brick and kill things. But then I started reading the rules and I was not all that impressed. I mean, the first thing is that for them to get the +1 toughness, they have to be touching two or more of those other models. So really, it's not like you can do a line. You have to kind of almost do like a zigzag thing and force it together for them to actually get that. So it's not actually as good as it first sounded. And the real absolute killer to these guys that I don't like is their weapon. It's only AP4, and so with so much 3+ armor out there right now, it's just not doing much for you. I mean, it has the ability so that once a game, basically, you can go and do like this super hit and it's AP2. But man, I mean, if these guys just would have had instead a power fist or something like that, that would have been so much better. But the way as it is, I mean, it seems that the way they're trying to build them is that they're going to be the ones who goes out there to really just tie up the big, huge blob squads that might be coming at you and just kind of hold them up forever. But you know, then of course your opponents are going to be wise, and that's not the way they're going to be dealing with them. So I was really disappointed with the way that they're all set up like this. I mean, they can't take any heavy weapons or anything. They're just... I might get one unit of them just because they look different, but you know what? Probably not. It's just, I don't see them as worth my time. The other part to it too is they have the command squad, the Deathwing command squad. And as soon as I saw this as well, I thought, man, this is going to be something really cool. I mean, maybe they probably like +1 attack each, and there'll be so many different options. Maybe I can take, you know, as many heavy weapons as I want or something. Man, this is so cool. And then I looked at them, and they're exactly the same as the elite version. Exactly. There is no difference, except for the fact that you can now be paying extra points to get the champ or the apothecary or the banner. And really that's where it is. That's what it's at, is you're going to be taking them for the banner. It's really cool that actually now you have a selection of banners you can be taking on these guys. It really makes me think of how it is in fantasy, and I really like the idea, of course, of just more options, right? The war gear section for the stuff is actually fairly large. There's a lot of stuff to pick from. So if this is the way 40k is going, where there's more options and more customization again, it might actually pull me back to be doing more of this gaming. But out of all of them, there's one that's just a dead obvious one. Because there's ones there where it can give the unit that it's in +1 attack. Alright, I mean, Belial's going to be in there. Always cool to give him +1 attack. But there's one that costs less, that gives a bubble effect and gives feel no pain. And I can guarantee that of all the armies you're going to be seeing of Deathwing, everybody's going to be taking that banner. Because out of the ones you have, it's so much better than the others and cheaper than some of the others as well. So there you have it, and that's really it. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, you got this whole book with all these pages and all these different units, and I mean, all I'm doing it for is the Deathwing. But you know, as I said, I was very happy with it. Just the fact that now I can change the size of the squads. There's more options I can take. They've gotten more interesting with that whole deep striking and the few extra little rules they've added in there. And you know, I'm excited to go out there and get some games in. So I'm gonna get at least hoping to get one this next week. And there you go. So hope this was at least somewhat informative to you. And if you want to see any more 40k stuff, I can say try and post. That might motivate me to do it. But to be completely honest, I probably won't be very interested. So there you go. There's my 140k Orc Tactical team for the year. So thanks for watching. Bye.